Juniper June Callahan resided in the Willamette Valley of Oregon, which was surrounded by a misty embrace. The air held the aroma of pine, and the faint buzz of the Columbia River could be heard in the distance. June, who was 24 years old at the time, was a wiry, flannel-clad dreamer, with a voice that could keep a bare room quiet or rouse a forest. June had a spark, a raw, untamed gift that wove the rugged beauty of her home into every note of her music. She was not simply another singer-songwriter strumming in Portland's coffee shops. There was something special about her. Her songs told tales of the Cascade Mountains, filled with tales of dreamers and loggers, of pathways soaked in rain, and of the pain of a heart that had been abandoned. She was ready to take her chance at something that was much more significant than the open mic nights in Eugene. It was a music competition that had the potential to alter the course of her life. During the morning of October, when June 1st became aware of the competition, the air was crisp. Taylor Sheridan's American Songbook Showdown was written in large letters on a flyer that was affixed to the bulletin board at Voodoo Donut. The well-known designer of Yellowstone, along with the country music superstar Blake Shelton and the Australian icon Keith Urban, was looking for the next voice to represent the American West. Who will win? An opportunity to perform at the Grand Ole Opry, a recording contract, and a tour across the country are all on the table. While June was reading the details, her heart was racing. The auditions were held in Nashville, but the regional tryouts were scheduled to take place in Bend, Oregon, approximately 2 weeks from now. The flyer was torn to shreds, and she slipped it into her denim jacket. At that moment, she felt a fire burn in her chest. June was hardly a novice when it came to music, but either way, she was not a polished performer. She had spent her childhood in a double-wide trailer just outside of Sisters, Oregon. Her father, who had retired from the forest ranger profession, had taught her how to play the guitar on a beat-up Martin guitar that he had won in a poker game. The myths of the country, including tales of the secrets of the Deschutes River and the ghosts of old lumber camps, were told throughout their home by her mother, who was a painter who sold landscapes at their neighborhood markets. The songs of June continued on that history, fusing elements of folk music, country music, and a dash of grit from the Pacific Northwest. Her loyal border collie, Sage, and a small throng of people at a bar were the only people she had ever performed for professionally. The rivalry was intense and fierce. Numerous individuals, ranging from cowboy crooners to Nashville aspirants, with polished boots and ghost-written tunes, would participate in the audition process. While June was aware that she did not possess the same luster as those individuals from Music Row, she did possess something else: truth. Not only did her songs contain lyrics, but they also contained the anguish of a forest that had been cut down, the thunder of a waterfall, and the loneliness of a night spent in a tiny town during a wet night. She remained confined to her cramped apartment for the subsequent 2 weeks, working on composing a new song in preparation for the audition. She gave it the name Cascade's Cry, and it was a heartbreaking ballad about a woman who leaves her mountain home in search of love, only to find herself adrift in a world that does not sing back to her. June loaded her instrument, her anxiety, and Sage into her rusty Subaru, and traveled to the Les Schwab Amphitheater on the day of the Bend audition. Sage was also a part of the group. With dreams as expansive as the high desert sky, the arena was bustling with hopeful individuals, some of whom were wearing skinny jeans and others of whom were wearing cowboy hats. When June's name was called, she strode onto the platform with a quiet fire, despite the fact that she felt little in her scuffed boots and jacket that she borrowed from a thrift store. With a suspicious expression on their faces, the judges, which included a local radio DJ, a producer from Portland, and a representative from Sheridan's team, observed her. After closing hers, June sung while allowing the chords of Cascade's Cry to pour out of her mouth. She had a voice that was raw, clear, and alive, just like the wind that blows through old growth pines. The throng fell silent. The panel of judges leaned in closer. At the conclusion of her speech, the applause began slowly but eventually became a roaring roar. The Sheridan representative offered her a nod that felt like a lifeline while the producer scribbled furiously in the middle of the conversation. Sage nudged June's hand as she exited the stage was on June's agenda. At the Nashville finals, everything was completely different. The streets of the city were lined with honky-tonks and dreams, and the metropolis moved with the pulse of aspiration. With her Oregon roots standing in stark contrast to the sequins and swagger of her opponents, June experienced a sense of being a fish out of water. The tournament was broadcast on television, and Taylor Sheridan's presence, which was seemingly larger than life, served as the panel's anchor. Blake Shelton brought his effortless charm, cracking jokes while listening with the attention of a hawk for the entire time. Through his passionate intensity, Keith Urban appeared to be able to see right through every artist, looking for the spark that could not be manufactured. The first performance that June gave was a challenge. It was Cascade's Cry that she selected once more, but the bright lights and cameras made her feel uneasy. While she was singing the first line, her fingers botched a chord and her voice started to quiver. Although Blake raised an eyebrow, Keith leaned in closer to her and fixed his gaze on her. The feedback he provided included the following: "Sing to the mountains, not the room. You got something that's genuine. If you don't want to let this stage take it, you're not here to impress us." Taylor continued, maintaining her abrasive demeanor. "You have come to share a tale with us. Say it out loud." As a result, June took their remarks to heart. During the subsequent rounds, she was able to find her feet. In her songs, she sung of the untamed heart of Oregon, about salmon runs, about mill towns that were becoming ghost towns, and about love that was as eternal as the basalt cliffs. Her performance became more daring with each passing moment, and her voice wove tales that seemed to belong to each and every person in the room. Blake referred to her as a poet with a sixth string, while Taylor, who is not one to lavish praise on others, remarked that her songs felt like they were carved from the land itself. It wasn't an easy battle to beat. A Texas rancher with a baritone that could shake the rafters, a Louisiana fiddler whose fire lit up the stage, and a native of Nashville with a voice that was polished to perfection were some of her fierce competitors. Every night, June questioned her own abilities, wondering if her rough edges may be able to hold their own. However, whenever she sang, she was reminded of her home. She recalled the mist that hung over Mount Hood, the sound of rain falling on her roof, and the tales that her parents had told her. The roots she had helped her remain rooted. The last round presented June with a choice. She could either play it safe with a crowd pleaser, or she could risk everything. She went with the latter option, releasing a brand new song titled Rivers Don't Lie. The song was a chance. It was a slow, agonizing ode to the Columbia River, with its verses filled with the anguish of leaving home and the desire to return. Despite the fact that the tune was straightforward, her voice carried it like a current that was unwavering and relentless. When she had finished, there was a momentary pause before the audience erupted into a roar of applause. In a grin, Blake stood up and walked about. The tears were in Keith's eyes. Only with a stony expression on her face, Taylor announced, "That's what we came here for." Hours were spent deliberating by the judges. June was seated behind the scenes, with Sage curled up at her feet. Her heart was beating as fast as a drum. The moment they announced her as the winner, she went completely still. While he was saying, "Get up here, Oregon," Blake's chuckle resounded loudly through the microphone. The trophy, which was a bronze guitar etched with a single pine tree, was presented to her by Keith, who then informed her, "You didn't simply sing. In addition to that, you brought an entire state with you." According to Taylor, who is known for her ability to narrate stories, her songs belonged in the canon of the American West. Overnight, June's life underwent a transformation. Almost immediately, the recording deal was signed, and studios in Nashville competed with one another to record her sound. Despite the fact that the tour took her from coast to coast, she insisted on beginning in Oregon, at the same amphitheater in Bend where it first started. She stood on that stage with Sage by her side and sang Cascade's Cry to an audience that was entirely familiar with the song's lyrics. Her mother's eyes were bright, and she was holding her father's old Martin in her hands. Her parents were present. In her entire life, June has never forgotten her roots. Her songs stayed connected to the rivers, trees, and the heart of the small community in Oregon until the very end. She was more than simply a voice.